How's it, yours? Welcome to my hot lap as well as my setup for Long Beach. But before we get going, just take note of the pit exit. That there is the end of the pit lane, so just make sure you don't cross that any sooner, or else you will get some warnings for unsafe exiting of the pits. Let's get going. Down the start-finish straight, we come under the Toyota bridge and already start looking for the middle of the track. So across the start finish line, moving over, get nice and tight up against the inside wall. You can see I've already made up some time off my fastest lap. Now I'm thinking the 400 meter mark, so I'm in a sixth, brake down third into third, back on the power, careful not to take too much of that curb. Now looking for a straight line into the fountain, down into first at the car rotate, but accelerate nice and early. Here, brake just as you go past the board on the outside, let the car float, don't touch the inside curb, 150 meters, turn in, stay off that curb as it can unsettle you. And now I'm moving to the right hand side, and you'll see just past the 300 meter mark there are red boards. There they are, brake down into second, back on that power. You can get the power on nice and early coming out of that corner. 200 meter mark, a brake down into second, take some curb with you. But don't touch the cone, as that will give you a time penalty. Now we're already thinking for the 300 meter mark, but it is just before. We don't quite get to sixth. There's down into third, then a touch into second, let the car rotate, keep it in third, gear down, let the car rotate nice and tight on the inside, braking in a straight line, down into first, rotate, back on the power. And I found a good second there off my fastest time, and I cross the line and do 1:28.8, so really happy with that lap time. The fastest I was able to get earlier in the session was a 1:29.2, so really happy with that performance. Okay, so let's take a look at the setup. So I have saved it as Long Beach. That would be the qualifying one, because obviously we'd add a bit more fuel in. The setup is as follows. So I have dropped the tire pressures down as low as possible. That's just because the track temperature is quite high. The other thing that I've done is I just released some of the brake pressure. I was on 100%. I have been using my left foot, so it has been a little bit tricky, but I just think that is probably just a feel thing. The brake balance I increased slightly. I just felt that when it was sitting on the 54 and 46 is that I was just losing the rear through turns 10 and 11, so that definitely helped me out there. In terms of the suspension, the campers, I've dropped them just to help with the temperatures and the heat. The ride height, I have kept it very similar to what we're using at Oschersleben. I have got the rear raised so the car can turn in. So cambers are down to -1 degrees in the front and a -0.8 in the rear. Ride height is 75 front and 79 in the rear. The toes, I've kept a slight little toe in, as well as increased the anti-roll bars. I want a little bit more initial turn in, and I've reduced the anti-roll bar at the rear just so that the car is not snapping and creating too much oversteer coming on out of those 90-degree corners, so you can get the power nice and early. The dampers, I have got a bit of a mix bunch here, but I have tried to keep them as equal as possible. So a slow bump on the fronts are 7,000, slow rebound 8,850. The bump transition is 480 with the rebound transition at a -600. On the rears we have the slow bump at 6,700 and the slow rebound at 8,850. The bump transition at 435, and then the rebound transition at -605. The engine braking, I did have it set to 3, but I just found that coming through turns 10 and 11 with the higher engine braking, meaning a lower level, is that the rear was just a little bit loose for me, but I did find it a lot more comfortable with the 10, and then you'll see that the actual drive is at its lowest, giving you the most acceleration. Then on the diffs, I have put the power up to 5, which what that essentially is going to do is just going to lock that diff on the power, so it will give you a slight little drift out, which is I blame it on the karting. And then for the coast is that's actually allowing you to get a little bit more turn in on the brakes, which I found really made a difference. And then don't forget to save it and let me know how it works out for you, and we'll see you on Thursday night. Thanks for watching, yos.